Uh, Good evening, everyone who's joining us across from India, and good morning to the folks who have joined us across from America. We will be starting our presentation just shortly. We have a guest speaker today on the session, so he would be giving his own insights in terms of admissions, and very specifically on today's session, focused on SAT. But we would just give a couple of minutes for more parents to join across, parents and families, so this session can become valuable to as many as people possible. And with every event or webinar that lets unbound holes true to our that the objective is to put out as much as information possible out there to make the admissions landscape a more accessible opportunity for as many as parents and families possible. So it's to give an equal level playing opportunity to students who can freely join us across and try to understand the perspective of admissions and US admissions, and also try to understand very specifically in our today's session, how do you get a top SAT score that looks something around 1550 out of a 1600. So we have got the person himself who has gone ahead and achieved the same. So we will be discussing, and we'll be just I'll be introducing him, and he'll also be sharing his own wisdom on how to really come across and get the right kind of a score. For now, I'll just request everyone to keep your cameras off and mics on mute. The chat section is dedicated specifically for you to let us know if there are any technical difficulties that are currently happening. And for anyone, if there are any questions that do pop up, you can use the chat section to drop them early, or you could just hold them up till the end of the session. We will be taking questions and answer questions at the end of the session, a live Q&A, which me and Malay will jointly answer. Today, we'll rather request you to keep your questions much more and as much aligned to SAT and to the entrance exam rather than the whole admission process itself, because today that is the major focus agenda. Right, so I think just under 1 minute we will start itself, and we're just giving a couple of more minutes for a few more parents just to join us, and then we will be on our way. I think we'll just wait a further minute from now. Right. So we'll now just get started on the presentation itself. I'll just firstly run you through with the quick roadmap that we'll be conducting our session through. I will start across with about SAT, where I'll discuss with you the digital SAT framework, the digital SAT scoring system that has changed since it's gone digital. I'll also give you a brief understanding over the SAT sections, the maths and the section, and we will then move across to the plan, which I will hand over to Malay, and he has got certain points that he'd like to highlight across. Which one of the most important things post the COVID era would be the importance of SAT, and when I mean that it's the post COVID lockdown era that we have gone back into that SAT system. So Malay is a really good person to get that understanding from. We then move across, and he'd give us an understanding of how do you go and across and achieve a SAT score as 1550, and a typical roadmap for students currently in grade 10 and grade 11, when they should be doing it, and how it is very easy being in India to get trapped in this whole aspect that you'll start preparing SAT all the way from grade 9. So it's really giving you that right time to prepare for that SAT, so you do have your extracurricular other aspect of your application in place. We won't be discussing over them, but it's just to remind you that there is a lot of other activities beyond the SAT, and even SAT itself is a very important aspect. So everything is important, SAT even as much as it can get important. It's got its extreme relevance. I will then take it back over. We'll discuss the approach that lets unbound holes, and then I will give you an opportunity to enroll for all of these various free resource that would help you understand and also help you understand your own SAT structure and your own SAT position. So, without further ado, we'll just now get started with the introductions. Let's Unbound began with a focus on skill building, empowering elementary and middle school students with STEM, life skills, and mentorship. Now, as these students then eventually progressed into high school, they started seeking admissions guidance, and that's where we listened. We evolved our services extremely seamlessly into integrate storytelling through applications and our already well established mentoring programs. Now, by combining personalized learning, skill development, and strategic admission support, we guide students right from their early academic years to top global universities. So today we have impacted more than 4,000 students across 25 countries, and a Google rating of 4.9 over a 5, and have done that with more than 1,25,000 hours of expert mentoring. We are proud to have partnered with some of the most fantastic organizations out there. For example, the Harvard Students Agent and Arizona State University Prep Digital. So both of them are extremely good opportunities as well to really create a strong application. These opportunities also ensure that our students really receive world-class educational experience. At Let's Unbound, we don't just prepare students for exams or admissions. We largely prepare them for life and try to create a personality in the center of all of our work, where admissions starts to become the side hustle. Now, introduction. I'll just move in to give you a description over our founders. So, on your left, we have Amol Patil, a serial entrepreneur and an education visionary. Experience at Tata and Exceed, which is India's largest edtech platform. Amol has helped scale impactful education solutions across 2,000 schools and across 6 countries, impacting more than 250,000 students. He's really known for his ability to blend business thinking with the on ground realities, and has been instrumental in helping startups from IIT Bombay and beyond success in the education space. Now, on your right, you can see we have Professor Nishant. Nishant is a mentor, educator, and the brains behind many of our learning pathways we share today. With 14 plus years of experience across academia, industry, he has counseled more than 1,000 designed curriculum solutions from K-12 to executive MBA programs. He's been an alumnus of SP Jain, a top-rated teacher, a proud mentor of change under Atal Innovation Mission. Nishan's philosophy: let students choose their path and become the best version of themselves. So together, their combined experiences and vision has really helped shape the approach that we bring into college counseling. A very practical, personalized experience, and one of the most important things we have as an etho worked as that we will be there to create a platform that gives as much as information possible in terms of admissions. Now, my own introduction. So, I'm an MBA from Symbiosis, and I've spent the last 12 years within consultancy, investments, and net tech both. I started my journey with Jaguar Land Rover and with Citibank, Standard Chartered Bank, where I went over financial consulting, and I had an experience with an edtech with Crimson and Added Education. Both of them are international players focused on admissions within US, UK, and Singapore. So that's my overall experience, and also within the realms of admissions. Now I'll quickly introduce you to someone who's truly special, our guest speaker for today, Malay. Malay is not just a high scorer, he is package, as they say. He's a standout student from Cathedral John Connon, class of 2024, and will soon be joined and has now joined the class of 2028 at Dartmouth College, one of Ivy League's most prestigious institutes. He has excelled across subjects like maths, economics, commerce, and achieved an outstanding SAT score of 1550. But his achievements really go beyond academics. He's been recognized in research, internships, and global competitions, including receiving a distinction in the highly competitive John Locke essay competition. Malay also balances brains with sports. He is a national level basketball player, and his heart is equally strong. He's a community leader who founded an NGO called Book, organizing book collection drives for underprivileged students. And if this wasn't impressive enough, half. He's also a talented student performer, actively contributing to his school and now currently college choir and charity events. Malay is someone who embodies excellence, initiative, purpose, and today he's here to share with you what really takes to get that right kind of a sad score, and he's really there to share his own journey on it. So Malay, if you could just wish everyone for a quick second back to you on your plan.
So, thank you everyone for being here.
Yeah,
Thank you for us for that illustrious introduction. I hope one day all of you all will have a very similar introduction and a really successful college journey going ahead at a wonderful institute like Sunbound, and I'm sure they'll be perfect guiding pillars in this direction towards a fruitful career in the US or the UK, depending on where you may choose to pursue your career. In terms of acing the SAT, I'm really excited to be part of this presentation and webinar and share with you all what were some of the big tips that worked really well for me and what helped me transcend my score step by step to eventually getting a 1550 and be blessed to be part of Dartmouth. It's been a wonderful experience for me, and I'm sure with the right training and the right guidance, it can be the same for you. Please do not be worried about the SAT. We will break down every component of it step by step and give you all a holistic understanding of what is required essentially when you're preparing for the SAT. But thank you again for us for the introduction.
Sure, Malay. So I'll just take over for you for a couple of minutes. Let me just fill them up what SAT is, and then you can come in with the expert understanding and knowledge. Now, with the introductions out of our way, let's just straight dive into the heart of today's sessions. Let's start with a clear understanding of what SAT is and a quick look at College Board, the organization that really designs this exam. So why are we really here today? Because the SAT still matters. Even in test optional world, a strong SAT can be a difference maker. It can really, unlock scholarships, help you stand out in competitive applications, and show that you are really ready for college level academic rigor. Now, the SAT, originally known as the Scholastic Aptitude Test, was first introduced in 1926, and over the years, it has really evolved to better assess students' critical thinking and problem solving skills. So, today's SAT remains a widely used college admission test, primarily for the United States, but used for universities worldwide. Now, the College Board, a non for profit organization founded in the 1900s, administers the SAT. Its mission to expand access to higher education by providing standardized assessments and resource for students. There are other programs that also College Board provides. So you do have PSAT, you have NMSQT, you also do have APs and placement and other ways that how College Board is typically looking across at this aspect. Now we're just introducing you what SAT is itself. We will now move into having an understanding of what a SAT in overall an exam is and what is the role in college application. So let's take a closer look at the digital SAT framework, how the test is structured, and what it evaluates. So the digital SAT has been redesigned to really have test taking experience more streamlined, secure as well, and focused on skills that truly matter for college and beyond. Now, here are some of the key aspects that you really need to be very clear with. The test lasts overall for 2 hours 14 minutes, which is now shorter than the previous paper based one. As the previous one still has two sections, that aspect hasn't changed. You still have maths, which is going to be covering your algebra, advanced mathematical concepts, and data analysis to be specific. Second section is then the evidence-based reading and which we normally just end up calling it as English. It assesses your comprehension, grammar, reasoning skills. The test is now administered online. That is also another major change, which has called it the digital SAT, making it really more efficient and accessible while improving security. Now, one of the most important change in the SAT is the shift away from your overall memorization, and it has now really moved into real world application of knowledge. So instead of just testing how well students remember formulas or grammar rules, the SAT will now really evaluate how can you apply these concepts in different contexts, whether in problem solving or reading comprehensions or logic reasoning. Now, this other thing that has also been extremely important and has been I'll say even more important, the test is also now adaptive, meaning the difficulty of questions will adjust on the students' performance. Now, these updates ensure that the SAT is a better reflection of your critical thinking and problem solving skills and abilities that are highly valued by both universities and eventually employers. Now that we have understood, what the overall test structure looks like, let's just move on to the next important part. How does the SAT scoring work? And so, since I have told you that this has now become an adaptive paper, so there's going to be a different set of questions for different students. How does that now all really translate into scoring? Does that mean that if I don't perform well in one and you get two, does that make it easier for you to score 1600? What is that overall concept? So now that we have understood the framework, let's just talk something, as I've just said, just as important, how will the scoring work? One of the changes with digital SAT is that it's now an adaptive. But what does that actually mean? The SAT is divided into two stages. Each section within writing, reading and writing, and maths. So everyone starts with the same stage one, as you can see on my screen. This includes a mix of easy, medium, and hard questions. Now, however, based on your performance well in stage one, you move to harder stage two, which contains mostly medium and hard questions. If you perform at a weaker level in stage one, you move to an easier stage two, which contains mostly easy to medium question. Now, this means that your performance in the first stage determines now your scoring range. Students who are placed in the harder stage 2 can achieve the highest possible score up to 800 per section. Students who placed in easier stage 2 will have a lower maximum possible score capped around 600. So why does the SAT use adaptive testing? The adaptive system creates or helps to create a more accurate and personalized assessment while also making the schedule shorter and more efficient. Since students only answer questions suited to their skill level, the test feels more tailored and avoids unnecessary questions of either very easy or very difficult questions. Now, one thing that you'll also see, the admission officers for years had this argument that the way the SAT has become difficult for the weaker students, it does not judge what does the student know. It actually judges what the student does not know. And ever since, these students get now an opportunity to get easier scoring, it's a better assessment of their specific knowledge to understand how much do they know. Because at the end of the day, just consistently knowing that this is another wrong question by the guy, he does know. So those were one of the key reasons why SAT has now become digital, has gone adaptive, and eventually was the reasons that they had taught digital. Now, moving across to the next section, let's just do some number crunching. Let's look into attributed across different sections and what does it really mean for your preparation. Breaking down the SAT score. So the SAT is now has been scored out of 1600, two main sections, maths again out of 800, reading out of 800, and as I've just said within the previous section, how you perform in stage one would really determine your final scoring range. Now, each section has a total of 54 question overall in terms of reading and writing. Maths has 44. Your final score is calculated based on the number of correct answers or the raw score and converted into a scale score from 200 to 800 per section. So let's just do a little bit of maths on specifically the time management, because that's something that you really need to understand. The total test duration, as you know, it's 2 hours 14 minutes, and here's how the time is split. Reading and writing for 54 questions. So that's approximately 1.2 minute per question. Within maths, you've got 70 minutes for 44 questions. So that's approximately 1.6 minutes or 96 seconds per question. So if you really think about it, if you take too long on a single difficult question, you're really running out of time for the easier ones. And this is where that digital aspect of skipping and returning back is a very important skill that you must master through practice sets, through various mock exams that you could give, that you're very sure on how to utilize this aspect. Now, Now, the how can you really maximize your score? So, if you really answer as one of those examples, try to answer 40 out of 44 maths correctly, you'd largely be around the area of 750 to 780 or around 800. And that is a lot of kids will give you the real way of how to get that right kind of a SAT score. Step one, get a very close score to an 800 within maths, and then there may be a bit of a drop within the English, and you can overall conclude at a 1500 kind of a SAT score. Right. Now, just moving across to the next slide, which we will then be discussing over the various sections of digital SAT. So we are now just looking at the math section. The SAT math section consists of four major content domains, each carrying a different weightage. So let's just go over them quickly, one by one. You've got algebra, approximately 13 to 15 questions, 35% weighted. You're looking at linear equations, linear functions, system of two linear equations, and their solution. Now, since this domain covers about one third of the total questions, mastering your equations and functions is really essential for a high score. Moving across to geometry and trigonometry, they've got again another 35% weightage, moving at the same way as algebra, 13 to 15 questions. Then the real topics that you'll be focusing across are again linear inequalities, equivalent expressions, non-linear equations, system of equations, trigonometry. Apart from this, you do also have advanced math section and the problem solving and data analysis. Both of them are at 15% weightage each, approximately both having 5 to 7 questions. And within maths, you look at those topics as you can just see on your screen within ratios, rates, proportional relations, one variable, two variable data analysis, probability and statistics. And within problem solving, you're largely looking at area volume calculations, lines and angles, triangles. So all of these various topics are going to be extremely important. Some of the key takeaways that we have seen over the past: algebra and geometry together really account for 70% of this math section. So really do focus most here on your practice. And at the same time, advanced math and problem solving do again contribute another 30%. So mastering the most frequently tested concepts will maximize your score efficiently. So we'll now discuss the effective strategies to prepare for these topics in a right or perfect manner. Now, I'll just move to your this is to the we'll now just move to the English or the reading or writing section that we have covered over the maths. So moving over to the reading and writing section of the digital SAT, just like in math, understanding the content breakdown helps us to prioritize study areas and maximize our scores. The reading and writing section is really designed to test your ability to analyze, interpret, and really apply knowledge of the English language efficiently. Overall structure that you can see, so craft and structure has approximately 28% of weightage, 13 to 15 questions. So this section would be focusing on words, sentences, passages, and structures and how they are conveyed. The key skills that you're really looking at is words in context, understanding how words choice affects meaning, structure and purpose, cross text connections. So all of this aspect is going to be extremely important. And since one fourth section is dedicated to mastering vocabulary and comprehension, these strategies become extremely crucial. Now, the second part is then in information and ideas, approximately 26%. And the same is there within standard English and of ideas. And those are the overall topics that you can see. I don't want to go extremely depth in breaking down the whole exam because I want to now hand over as quickly as possible to Malay, who can share his opinion around the overall plan. Just to quickly close across in terms of the introduction, SAT, as I'd even said initially, is an international paper now. So even within India, more than 30 Indian universities now accept score for direct admissions into their undergraduation programs. For students considering abroad in India, if you want to keep your options open, say let's say applying to a US or Singapore and having Indian backups, then SAT is a really smart option because gives you a globally valid score. It helps you to avoid multiple entrance exam here in India as well, and it can replace testing formats required by private Indian and Singapore universities. Now, just to give you a quick view at the various colleges that are giving you this option, you've got Ashoka, Flame, Amity, Indian School of Business and Finance, Ahmedabad University, Prakasha, Kriya. So these are just some of the names that have actually started using SAT as a tool for selecting students. So overall, if you're considering to study in India but also want to have your options abroad or vice versa, they can really browse university choices. Now, without further ado, since we have now understood what is and how this overall aspect works, I just wanted to hand it over to you, Male, so you could change the slide.
Hi, Firas, thank you. You mentioned I could change the slides. You can go ahead and do it as I skim through the presentation.
Oh yeah, I think yeah, I'll just
Yeah, I don't think I have access, but
give it to you as well
yeah.
if it just
So,
works that way. Yeah.
good evening, everyone. Again,
Please
great
see
that
if you
you're
got
all
it.
here. It
I have tried
shows.
to slide control.
No, I don't think I can do it.
You're able to access?
Sorry.
Sure, fine. No issues. I'll moving on. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I'll just control the slides for you. You can
sure,
continue.
perfect. So, to start off, the beginning was a very thorough understanding of the nitty-gritties and the breakdown of the SAT in terms of the question that are asked, the number of questions, the analysis of the test on a very mathematical level in terms of how much time you can devote the different sections and stuff that is very concrete, which everyone needs to understand before getting into the test in terms of there being two different sections, things like that. This point on, I'm going to talk about more of my experience, why I believe the SAT is still extremely important, and break down some of the tips and tricks that I use. I would really appreciate if when we come to the tips and tricks, if you feel the need to take notes, please do so, because I'm sharing experiences that have really helped me, have helped my friends, and hopefully they'll be able to help you as well. So to start off, let's try and understand why the SAT is so important. You've heard for the last, I guess, 2.5 years during the pandemic that all schools are test optional. Why do we need to give the test? Yet I chose to give the SAT 3 times, submitted my score to Dartmouth, and I think it did make a huge, huge difference. So there has to be some disarray or disalignment between those who give the test and those who don't. And my answer is very simple whenever it comes to this. It is that there is no downside of giving the test. And all these applications and all these universities that are changing their policies and going back to the SAT being a requirement stands as a testament to that. So why does the SAT still matter in college admissions? Because it's a standardized way of universities instantly knowing how you fare in math and reading, which would be difficult to understand if they didn't have a metric of this sort. So with the pandemic, being a thing of a past now, it's a very, very valuable metric for universities to understand and gain a good, thorough understanding of your performance in a standardized system and a setup. While there are still test options, strategies in place, I promise you these are surely going to change. They're not here to stay. In fact, Dartmouth was the first university in the Ivy League which said we are going to go test compulsory. The SAT becomes a requirement, and Harvard has fallen Howard has followed, and most like about four other IVs from the eight have followed suit and are changing their policies. So I would really urge you to understand that if one university is doing it and others are seeing a pattern, it's soon to spread to all other universities. There still may be which universities are a test optional, but it goes without saying that the SAT is a very important aspect, and I would still request everyone to give that attempt at least twice or thrice in their overall scheme. And I'll come again why I'm saying twice as a minimum requirement. Again, the SAT showcases your skills beyond your GPA. If you have a strong GPA, it helps boost it even further. If you have a slightly weak GPA, a strong SAT could help in compensating. That doesn't mean your GPA should stay low, but in both ways, the SAT has a very, very good advantage. It opens a lot of scholarship opportunities, especially in universities in India. A good SAT could get you a scholarship, say in Ashoka University or Amity University. It further strengthens your application and as a whole gives a very holistic outlook to your entire application to the to US universities. If you're applying to universities which have reinstated SAT requirements, your score will be a mandatory part of your application. If you're applying to test optional schools, you could choose whether or not you want to submit your SAT, and you could tell them whether you want it to be considered as part of your application or not. Yet, a strong SAT score in such universities significantly boosts your chances of acceptance. I submitted a SAT score to a test optional Dartmouth back in 2023, and the results were in my favor. Lastly, strategic preparation for the SAT is very important. Going back to my experience, which I will come to in depth towards the end, the first attempt I gave was a disarray, but as I improved my strategy and my planning, each attempt has been a stepwise process to a final grade score that I'm actually proud of to this day. So we will get into why strategy is so necessary for a time-based exam like the SAT and break it down into what strategy really means. So moving forward, you need to prioritize two things: how you can build the right study plan, and number two, how you're going to maximize that study plan to maximize your eventual score. We could go to the next slide. Firas,
Can you see
could you
the
move to the
next
next slide?
slide? It's changed.
There appears to be a slight lag, but yeah, it's that one.
Sure.
So coming to this, the scores and breaking them down in terms of metrics, while there is, you can ask anywhere, you can ask on the net what you think a good score is, and you will get various different websites giving you different ranges. It's very simple. Your score is a representation of the universities you have access to, and there are certain thresholds universities meet with regards to their score. That doesn't mean there won't be outliers. There would be a lot of kids with 1550s, 1580s who get rejected from Dartmouth, Harvard, and all the best universities. There also might be a lot of kids with 1450s who get into Dartmouth. But solely based on statistics and percentages, those kids who fall in the range of 1500s to 1580s are usually having a better chance of acceptance as compared to those between 1300s to 1500s. So what I mean to say is your SAT score is not an all-inclusive metric for you, but it is a very important determining factor. Just because you have a high SAT score does not mean you can lack with a poor application. If you have a strong application, a weak SAT score doesn't mean it's going to balance out. Each thing stands on itself, and having a high SAT score, as the table shows, really means differently in different universities. So on your left, you can see Dartmouth, and I can speak from experience here. Keeping the SAT score aside, this is a very competitive university, and sometimes it does hit that you're in a very competitive place where everyone really wants to do well. And this is all the top universities are going to face a similar challenge where you're in an environment where everyone is really, really, really keen on studying, improving, and keep constantly moving forward. So the SAT scores, I would really understand why they're so high, and it's because the students here are phenomenal. So we see the 25th percentile score is a 1500, which is already a quite a high and impressive score. 75th percentile is a 1580, which is straight up bonkers. I use the word bonkers because, again, getting a 1580, it's so close to perfection. It is really difficult to master in the SAT. And again, we'll get into why that is in towards the end. Most of these admitted students are in the top 1 to 2%. I would actually say in the top 1% of the students who give the SAT. If you look at global rankings, the average of the SAT, I think, is about 11, 12, or 1300 in that range. And these kids who are getting 1500 and 1580s are in the top brackets, constitute the SAT scores. There's another university on the right, with no disrespect, it's just statistical figures of public universities. Their range is 1160 to 1380. Again, there are different metrics different universities use, but as a standard rule of thumb, the better your SAT score, the better the university you have access to. Again, I mentioned in the beginning there are thresholds, and sometimes a weak application or a application on the fence, if it's supplemented with a weak SAT score, it could mean an instant rejection. We also need to understand that applicants look at applications for about 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and they quickly decide in rapid speed how they're going to go about assessing the application. A high SAT score could really convince them to view your application differently otherwise. If they see a student who's got a 1580 or a 1600, they will surely be flawed in terms of the way they review the rest of their application. And there could be some convincing by a score itself give you a higher chance of admittance. So looking at the chart at the bottom, you can finally see a majority of students score between 500 to 600 in each section, which is 1000 to 1200 as a total cumulative score. A very small percentage scored over 700. This does not mean 700 is the target, because if you get 700 in both sections, that's a 1400, which could be a good score to some, but it's not a good score to most universities. So please understand that small percentages doesn't mean you did a good job. You need to keep pushing beyond the threshold of what you think is good. And 700, it's commendable, remarkable, but you need to plan how do you want to push that further to a 750, a 780, to eventually an 800. And that's what exactly this platform will provide you to do. So whether it's admissions, scholarships are standing out, your SAT score will be a game changer, and understanding these benchmarks is of extreme importance and your first step towards setting your very own goal. You can move on.
Right. I'll move on to the next slide. Yeah.
Yep, please. Perfect. So we just were talking about thresholds, and I think this slide is a good representation of what I mean by thresholds. And you look at the MITs, the Caltechs, the Harvards in the world. They're looking for students who have phenomenal scores. 1550 would almost be a benchmark. And I promise you, while most kids would think 1550 is remarkable, oh, for I think the slides change. Yep. Yeah. While most would think 1550 is remarkable,
Yeah.
in
No,
most
no.
rooms that I'm here at Dartmouth, I see students who have 1560s, 1570s, 1580s. There's no threshold. And I'm sometimes a kid with the lowest score in a group of college kids here at Dartmouth. So it's really shocking that even a score like a 1550 is considered to be on the lower end of the spectrum in certain situations. But again, I would like you guys not to get too caught up in the numbers specifically because honestly, I feel a difference between a 1550 and a 1560 is not much. 10 points doesn't change much. There's a lot of other factors that go into the test and the way the metric is given. So as long as you're within a certain range, about a 1530 to the max, you have a perfect runway for wonderful universities and you've ticked the box of SAT standardized requirement perfectly. So you can lose the guilt of having one application be perfectly fine. So again, the nitty-gritties of a small score, like a small gap between 10 and 20 points, will not be viewed negatively as long as you're within a certain range. And by the ranges, this is a perfect representation. The top 10, you can see what the scores are. As you go below, the rankings will reduce, the requirements of scores will also reduce. Yet, if you apply to, as I mentioned, a SAT score could boost a weak application and a weak GPA in a university, which really would be looking at you as an outlier who's been one of the students who's had the best SAT score. So say you apply to a BU or a BC with a 1500 or a 1550, that really gives you a massive boost as opposed to the rest of the batch, which would be 1400s. You can move on. Perfect. So, just a few guidelines in terms of reaching your target score. Number one would be set your target score. For me, the target score that I would set for myself would have been a 1600 because when you force yourself to really push and get your highest possible score, that is when eventually you will perform at the same level. You set a target score of 1400, 1350 will be satisfactory to you. Set a score of 1500 or 1450 will be satisfactory to you. You need to set your goals as high as possible and then actually work towards them, not talk about them. So when we say set your target score, of course, it's university based. We just looked at each university will have different thresholds and benchmarks for a good SAT score. But keep in mind that you cannot apply with with a like a super low SAT score to a phenomenally difficult school. Another thing to keep in mind is we're all I'm guessing most of us on this presentation will be Indian students, which are international students. Understand the challenge of going to a top university is even more so of an uphill battle when you're an international student and you have a weak SAT score. So please set the right targets, have the right approach towards finding a correct university based on what is a good fit between you and your SAT score, and just a few pointers. Set a list of potential schools, make a list of the top 10 colleges you might want to apply to, and see the SAT scores they require. This can be available on Big Future and College Board extremely easily, or just a quick Google search will show you the same. Find the 75% scores of these universities. You have to be in the higher end of the spectrum as an international student, and you need to keep that margin for error if in case your application is viewed poorly in other aspects. So you need to be in the top threshold of your school. Identify the special requirements they have. Georgetown is a university which asks for every single SAT score. You cannot give the SAT 5 times, 7 times, and expect that that will yield eventually a good result. There's also the law of marginal utility for those of you who have done economics. The more the SAT scores you give does not mean you will get improved performance every single time. Again, set your target score, set a high target score, please, and reach and push to achieve that eventually. Step two is assess your current abilities, and that's a diagnostic test. Please give the diagnostic test for both the SAT and the ACT. The ACT is very similar in structure, and it is acceptable as well by most, by not most, by all the universities except the SAT. All of them accept the ACT as well. The concept is exactly the same. It's just two different companies with two different products, but the test is identical. There is a science section in the ACT, but it's more of a reading section with science comprehensions. So do not be scared by the science aspect. There is no mugging up of concepts that you would need to do. For me, the SAT worked out best because I just felt more confident giving the SAT. I also felt, well, the ACT is ranked on 36, which is so a 35 with where a student gets a 35 in all subject fields, whereas a student who gets 35 in few and not in the others. I felt the SAT was more comprehensive in the fact that you have differentiations between 1550, 1540, 1560, whereas in the ACT, they would all fall under a 35 or a 36. So you can't really make out the difference in that light. For me, the SAT worked out best in terms of math and English and the areas that I was very comfortable with. Give a diagnostic test and get an understanding of where you stand. Please, self knowledge is the most critical, and when you know where you stand, you can decide perfect plan to go forward. Record your scores, write down your total score, your math score, your reading score, writing score, of course, and get an understanding of where what section is letting you down, where are you weaker than the rest. Identify the gap that you aim to close, calculate how many points you need to increase to reach your target score, and eventually settle on a prep method which will get you on the right track. Eventually, get each section to your perfect satisfaction. Step three, create a perfect schedule and build a system and a timeline that keeps you on track. We'll come to the timeline in just the next slide and you'll understand which attempt is supposed to give when in your respective college journey. And based on that, you can estimate your study schedule. Just sorry. So yeah, estimate your study time. Plan for at least 2 months before you give the SAT. 2.5 months, I would say, is ideal. I understand the college application time is surely demanding in terms of there being so many different things for you to finish. There's a lot of different aspects to a good college application, and 2 months may seem like a lot, but again, I will come to my experience as to why 2 months is a minimum requirement to get a good score. Like I mentioned, you need to keep your attempts to, I would say, a three would be the max, and the best results would come from three attempts. And you can't spend less time or more time if you want to do three attempts and you want to do it in. If you're giving 2.5 months per attempt, it will take about 6 months to eventually reach your ideal score. Daily study plan. This is like very basic in terms of how you study for a normal school exams. You treat your SAT like that. You treat them like a very important school exam, which will be graded separately by a college applications team. So the daily study plan is a basic. It's keeping time aside, setting thresholds of when you're going to study, practicing questions, all the basic preparatory guidance. Track your progress is step four. Understand, like I mentioned, where you're falling back, where are you doing well, and failure is the best teacher. I feel where you fail the most, where you make the most mistakes, will teach the most about your own patterns and what's going wrong in the way you prepare. For example, I used to have a very difficult time with the reading comprehension with the SAT, and I realized over time that speed is more important because as Faraz mentioned that the challenging questions are going to come, they will come towards the end, and if you try to overthink and overanalyze every single question, you won't get time for the later attempts. So my simple solution was the simple questions. I go with the first option that comes to my head. Of course, I will review everything and I will not be careless about it, but at the same time I won't overthink the same option multiple times. It's a very common factor that happens to most kids in the SAT because the options are so similar. But go with the flow and see what works for you. What works for me might not work for you, but this is just an example of something that I did to eventually leave me with more time for the challenging questions to improve. So identify your own study patterns. No one can do this. No counselor, no college advisor, the best in the world will not tell you what your own study patterns are unless you yourself reflect and think about what you need to change. Yeah, monitor your progress, refine your schedule, keep working on your weak
Right.
areas. Step five would be seek additional support. Get a comprehensive SAT prep program through different. There's a lot of websites in the net which can give you support. Let's Unbound has wonderful guidance as well, and get a deeper analysis of what's wrong with your SAT and how you can improve it, and keep maximizing your score every single step. You should need to keep upping the mock scores that you get to eventually have a good score in the final exam. So the final takeaway is that you set your score based on your dream school, assess where you stand with a practice test, create a structured time-bound prep plan, and then you track your progress and just watch your SAT score reach amazing heights. We can move on.
Yeah,
Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. So coming to the checkpoints and milestones for grade 10 students, I believe this to be the most effective SAT strategy. Well, I did not follow this exactly, and I would not recommend people to do what I did, which again, we will come to in just a second. But this first SAT attempt will give you perfect amount of time. It's November 26th. Most high schools and college, like 11th and 12th grade, will, and even the 10th grade rather, will start in the months of June or July. It's relatively easy and free flowing for the first few months before your final exams. So you should be aiming to give it within 2 to 3 months of your first attempt of November 26th. I would like to rephrase rather and say your first attempt should be about 3 months of prep time, nothing less than that. Focus really hard on getting the concepts down, and once you have that down, every attempt will be easier, will be more sort of autopilot, and then you can reduce the time between attempts if you feel the need to do so. So while this is not a pure science, you could change your attempts by one date or so, just to give you a relative analysis of where each attempt should be and how it should be placed. Because the people who've designed this have been doing college admissions for very long, and they know when the crunch periods are. You do not want to be giving an attempt super close to the months of August when your Common App will be going through. You do not want to give an attempt when your LORs from your professors are due, when your APs might be coming up. So we've planned this in such a way that you have the most freedom to give as much time as possible to the SAT when the attempts show up, as opposed to having to fight for it later on when you have APs and LORs and Common App essays, the application, writing, giving interviews for colleges. All of that will come much later. So we want to get the SAT out of the way. And trust me, the satisfaction you will get when you have your SAT score and you know that this is done and gone is really, really rewarding. It's really liberating. So please plan it accordingly and have enough time for each attempt, but also be be attentive of the fact that this journey is not done. There's still lots to come. So attempt one is in November of 26. Again, depends on which year you are. If you're a grade 10 student, in November of 26, you will be essentially giving your first attempt. I would advise grade 10 students to finish what the math they've learned in grade 10 is, get more, like, improve their skill sets in math, improve your understanding of the math you're doing till grade 10, and then give the SAT. Giving the SAT in grade 10 itself, sure, you can do it. You could try, shoot your shot if you have time and you're really preparing. Do that, go ahead. But for me, I would never recommend that to any student because the concrete foundational principles that you learn in the SAT, I think a basic understanding of grade 10 maths and completing that is necessary. So please wait, give the SAT next year. If you're keen to start preparing now, nothing stops you. Go ahead. Come so wonderfully efficient at writing each exam that you could start preparing later. Nothing is stopping you, and you can keep improving your skill sets. But I would ideally say that if you want to plan your schedule perfectly and retain everything you've learned, start in July of 26, give the exam in November of 26. Attempt two is January. After you've given your November attempt, if you've given about 3 to 4 months of preparing for that, you have about 2 months for your Jan attempt. Like I mentioned, the amount of time you'll have to prepare keeps reducing, and you won't need the 3 months you eventually needed because you will have guidance and your experience of the previous attempt. Next attempt would be in Jan. You have the whole month of December to prepare. Please capitalize on your winter break. Prepare for your SAT in January. And the last attempt would be in March, where you eventually are essentially trying to maximize your score. One thing to keep in mind when I break down each attempt is SAT attempt one. It is a loosener. It is for you to get an understanding of the test in an actual test simulated environment. That does not mean you go into it half hearted. That means that if you have a weak score, that's okay because you have attempt two to consolidate that and get that super high. Attempt two is the final score. You should believe attempt two is the score you're going to submit to your university. You should put all your eggs into that attempt two, and you should really, really focus on maximizing that to the best possible result. Because oftentimes, for me, multiple attempts worked and I kept improving. Sometimes students might plateau. So, attempt two is where you need to really push and get the highest score possible. And the other reason I say that is because you never know. Sometimes you might not have the opportunity to give attempt three. Something might come up. You might have other requirements. I postponed my attempt three for 5 months. For 5 months, I canceled one after the other after the other. I was unable to do it because of so many other constraints. We had a basketball tournament that came up. We had a competition I had to go for overseas. So there's a lot of different things that will come up during our college application process. So attempt three is an outlier. Attempt two is where you maximize your score, and attempt three is where you push that boundary even further. For me, I did attempt two and I got a 1500. I was not happy. I wanted to give a final shot at the SAT, and I gave my last SAT after my college admission, which was attempt three, where I got a 1550 eventually. So please keep in mind that attempt three is the last possible resort, and you need to work really hard to eventually maximize that in the last few months of your term. We can move forward.
Mm, 1 second.
Yep. This is exactly the same for grade 10. We've just looked at grade 10, the dates. Grade 11 is exactly the same, just the years have been changed, where you can see that now you're giving it in November of 25. It's coming up in a few months. Get a good understanding. Start watching YouTube videos, if nothing, just to get an understanding of what the SAT is, and the rest stays the same. So before I end, I have a few tips that I would really like to share with you all. You can again choose to note this down. But I've touched upon this in bits and pieces here and there while I've been talking. And again, thank you so much for listening to me all this while. I know it can be overwhelming. I know it can be a lot. So take it easy and it'll all be fine. So coming to the first the number one tip that I would almost enforce on every single student would be concepts mean nothing without practice. The reason I say this is the SAT is a game of concepts. They have the same questions year after year, twisted and given the students in the same exact format. And if you know the concepts behind the question, there should be nothing stopping you from getting 90% of the questions right. Again, this with me, this comes with practice. And coming to my journey, I gave the first SAT in December. Like we mentioned, November was the first time for y'all. I gave it in December because that's when it was available in the pandemic. And I got a 1390. Shocking, right? 1390 was a super low score, and the reason was because I just got out of a basketball tournament and I gave the SAT within 1 week of preparation, believing that it should be perfectly fine. Why? Because I thought I had read the concepts well enough so I would be able to apply them in the exam. And what eventually happened, I knew how to do the concepts, but I didn't have the practice of writing those questions fast and quickly. And a single twist will throw my entire momentum off, which is why a week of preparation, even 2 weeks of preparation, means nothing. So I refocused and I gave the attempt again. My second attempt was a 1500. And what changed? I did every single sum, every single question that was possible, every resource that was available on the net, past papers, and everything in the middle is what I done. And eventually I reached to 1500. And my scores were 800 in math and 700 in English. I had maximized math. And this is what I mean by concepts. When you have time to really, really, really focus on your concepts and then practice those concepts, you should get a full score in math. Because as I've said, each question in the SAT, whether you look at a question 5 years back or 5 years in the future, it's the same. And why? Because it's in the name. It's a standardized test. Test cannot change beyond a certain trickiness. It will stay within a gap of difficulty, and they have to keep it standardized for every university kid that gives it between the ages of 30 to 20, 10, whoever's graduating between now to maybe 5 years in the future. So it's a standardized test, and if you get the concepts, practice will help you cement those concepts. Number two, what essentially changed my score from a 1500 to a 1550? It was mock tests. And if you were to ask me what my preparation was between attempt two and attempt three, I did not open a single book. I did not read any concepts again because by then I had already done training I had already learned myself about the SAT for 6 months. I gave 17 mock tests between attempt two and attempt three. 17. My preparation time was about a month long because it was right towards the end of the college application cycle and there was so much going on, which is why I do not recommend this method to students of leaving it to the end. I was almost I was planning on not even giving the third attempt, but I gave it to my applications to most universities had gone through and then sent the email talking about an improved score. So please do your applications early, finish this early, but mock tests mean the most. Please again note this down. As many mock tests as possible. Blue Book has 4 tests to offer, but please go beyond that. Find mock tests on the net. Ask ChatGPT to create a mock test for you. Put a mock test of Blue Book onto a ChatGPT model or a generative AI and ask them to change the question and give you a new test. The options are limitless. I did not use AI as much as I could leverage it right now. You can. You have the opportunity to do so. AI will improve even further. Ask them to create mock tests for you and give as many as possible. Number three, don't overdo your attempts. I've mentioned this before, I'm mentioning it again. Georgetown looks at all attempts. While that doesn't mean that most of the universities don't ask you for all your attempts or the number of attempts you've given. But the reason I say three is max is because you need to give your time enough preparatory time to work on each attempt. You need enough time to reflect on what went wrong in your previous SAT so you can improve further. If you give, I know people who give in 5, 6 attempts and their score just changes up and down by 10 to 20 points or 30 points in max, and that is conclusive of nothing. You could give the SAT 7 to 8 times and go great for you, but it's a waste of money, it's a waste of your time, and it's a waste of the eventual results. You're earning nothing by giving the SAT more than 3 or 4 times. So I would say 3 times is optimum. Please stick to that. We again spoke about it. SAT one is a lose not to get you an understanding. SAT two is where you maximize the score, and SAT three is where you push that boundary of what you consider maximum. Again, in my experience, I considered a score in 1500s would be satisfying to me, but for some reason, I just knew I could push this further, which is why I gave it again. So let people say what they want to. If you feel you can push your score to the third attempt, do a third attempt. Number four, super scoring is an absolute beauty. When I say beauty, because it is the concept of super scoring is I would commend all of you to please check on the net what super scoring means. But it means you can choose the best score in reading in from one test and the best score in math from the other. So you could combine your English score in one with math from the other and eventually get a wonderful super score. No universities do not look down on super scores. They do not care whether you've super scored or not. Trust me, you will need to submit both your attempts to the university, but they do not care. They eventually on your file will show your super score result of, and that's what's going to be viewed by university. So please give 2 attempts at the minimum to super score and have the opportunity or the option to super score. Number five, so as mentioned this multiple times, the test is adaptive. And adaptive means the first section is going to be standard for everyone. And based on how you perform in the first section, the next questions in the second section of English and math both will change based on how you perform. The first questions are easy, and which is why you need to stay in the flow and go with that flow and ensure you get all the first ones right. You cannot have any mistakes in the first one. And this brings me to point six, I guess now we are at. Yep. So point six is questions depending on the difficulty of the test have different points associated with them. And what I mean by that is if you have an easy test, if you get an easy question wrong, it could really hit your performance by almost 30 points. Shocking, right? That happened with me and one of my friends in a previous attempt where I just got one question wrong, but it was a foolish mistake in a very easy section, which hit my score by 30 points. So you cannot afford to have any concepts weak on the easy questions. Like I mentioned, 90% of the questions are the same. So you need to get every single easy question right. And this has two benefits. It builds your flow, your momentum, and it keeps you calm as you go through each question. Don't overlook easy questions as they're very simple. That could be a twist that could really hit your score by 10, 20, 30 points. So ensure you get all the easy ones right. And what's shocking is if on a difficult test you get a difficult question wrong, you could get up to 2 or 3 questions wrong, and that could only hit your score by 10 points. So it matters which questions you're answering well. That does not mean you can waste you can assume that difficult questions are going to be hard to get and just quit them. But that means that you need to get all the easy ones correct and then shoot for the difficult ones. Number seven is be calm and composed. It's very generic advice, but it works really well. My attempt to, I think one of the reasons I got a 1500 was because I was so anxious with the fact that this is one of the last chances, but be relaxed. Everything will be fine. And attempt three was I have nothing to lose. I have my score behind me supporting me. Now I'll just go with that key confidence and push it further. So what I'm trying to say is be relaxed, be in the moment in your exam, and everything will be all right. And the last thing is the difference between a 1500 and a 1550 is huge. Again, the reason I say that is because I've done this myself. I've had to scale my score up to that level. And the reason I'm saying this is because reaching a 1500 is possible. It's very doable. In fact, a 14, 15, 1500 is very possible because, like I mentioned, 90% of the questions in the SAT are easy. They're consistent with what you've done. Balanced 10% of questions is where they actually test you to see what separates an Ivy League kid or a top 10 university kid from a kid who might go to a public university or the top 50 universities in the US. Because that's where they truly try to trick you and test you. And again, concepts and practice and constant mock exams will set you apart. So in the last 5 to 10% of difficult questions, that's where they're effectively seeing which kid deserves a 1550 or a 1580 and which kid deserves a 1500 or the 1450. So to summarize, concepts, mock tests, don't overdo attempts, super score, be adaptive for the test, be calm and relaxed, and know that in the end, It'll all be okay if you put the right planning in place. We mentioned time and time again that the SAT is strategic. So please make a strategic study plan, work accordingly, and it'll all be fine. Thank you so much for listening to me today. And I hope any of the advice or some of the advice that I've shared was effective, helpful, and it was something noteworthy to spend an hour of your time on.
Right. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Malay. Malay, just a quick question. Am I lagging or can you hear me and see me properly?
Yes, there is a slight lag for us, but I think it comes and goes, so you should be fine now.
Okay, so I think I'll just to make sure that at least my voice is not, getting lagged out. You'll just hear me perfectly. Now, from this point onwards, I will be running you guys quickly approach on how we help students really unlock this path towards the kind of SAT score Malay has been talking about. And as Malay had said, one of the most important things for you is to currently understand the trajectory that you're currently on. So just quickly use the chat section. I am dropping you all of you guys a good here. You'd be able to access this link and do a SAT diagnostic. Moving on, I'll be giving you another QR code which you'll also be able to access this exact diagnostics. The agenda or the idea behind the diagnostic is so you could get an understanding, and exactly as Malay was saying, to understand where your current problems, challenges, and potential for scores are, and where you start to create your personalized. Then let's unbound one of those strong things that we do. We have one-on-one live tutoring across with one of our mentors, and they help you in exclusive strategy sessions to understand how you need to deal with the SAT problem to get that right kind of score. So we do have all kind of sessions as such. We also do help you with full length mocks, and even the points when I was pointing out and saying that this is a very important aspect. Just that small thing that may not look as big as just let's saying marking it and coming back to it at a later stage. Just practicing that takes a little bit of a couple of mock full length tests, practicing that online on screen calculator, mastering all of those tools is an important thing. And that's where we really do stress across on those full length mock tests, and we do provide 20 of them. So eventually your actual SAT, the 21st one, just feels like a mock on itself. Now, as there with all of our preparation courses and exams, we truly believe these are the three most important pillars within SAT and even also other examination, but more so within SAT, where accuracy is extremely important, and speed, and at the same time exam strategy and stamina. And what am I really saying? If you remember the seconds that I was talking to you about, 72 seconds, 1.2 minutes to answer a question, and at the same time you're sitting for a 2 hour 14-minute exam. So you do have that stamina, you do have that strategy problem to go across and attempt that whole exam and try to answer as many as questions possible. And because of that time crunch, accuracy and speed are again primary aspects behind this examination. One of those core things that we've always stressed across, that's extremely important to practice, and to practice as many as time possible. And just to put it across, a famous quote by Bruce Lee himself, he had said that, I fear not the person who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick but 10,000 times. So it is that kind of ideology that you need to think across, that how many times can you increase that practice aspect. Now, just to show you across how does our overall diagnostic test summary look like, this is, you could have a quick or a good glance over this one aspect, that it'll be a breakdown between the two sections, the maths, the and the reading and writing section. And you'll have a score breakdown. You'll know how many correct questions you have, how many incorrect questions you have, and how many questions that you actually ended up skipping. And the same kind of data then gets divided up into sections itself, where you can see topic wise which are the correct ones, which are the incorrect ones, and which are the ones that you skipped. And the same of information is also available when you look across at your math section. Just again, repeating that same part with why do we believe that the digital SAT is on a really strong aspect. One of the most important things is our decades of research. We have been helping students with this SAT part for at least a decade in preparing them through this journey. We've helped them through a personalized attention program. And one of the most important things that we do, we create a three-tiered preparation in which we will really carry them across from their current standard, moving across to that difficult, to that 1500, 1600 standard aspect. And one of the most important things about digital SAT, that it just becomes part and parcel of our overall program, where you just look at it as all in one preparation. So that's your key reasons why you should be largely looking across at SAT. And this is just to give you an overview of our package, which is largely 90 hours of foundation prep, strategy, and live mocks, split in 45 hours of contact, live tutoring, and 45 hours of self learning hours. And at the same time, you have 60 hours of mock test, the same 20 mock tests that I was talking to you about. Beyond SAT, these are the plethora of services that we provide right from elementary school to middle school and then eventually high school. Uh, to share a couple of success stories, this is just one student who had joined us across with an 1190 score, and with 60 days of work, we had, really pushed them into that 1340 kind of a category. And sorry, I we had a video plan, but I'll just skip over this. And this is another example of a student who had joined across with us at a 1300 and eventually went into a 1540, scored a 800 out of 800 in maths with a 740 in the reading and writing sections. Right now, as we always end all our sessions with giving you as much as resources possible. So the SAT diagnostic, if you could just take a screenshot there of the QR code, you'd be able to also access that diagnostic again, and you'd be able to assess your current standing. You'd be also be able to access all of these various newsletters that we do, right? I will just leave you the link of one of them, which is getting 800 in the SAT reading and writing section. So I'm just using chat section to also that one other link for you. Once you do access this platform, you'll be able to get the other newsletters as well. Now, just moving across to the next part in terms of, sorry, moving on to the next part about our master classes. These are the similar sessions like the one that I'm just currently conducting. We do one every weekend. The next weekend, we will be looking into your, overall personal statements or the 10 activities, another aspect within the common application. So we'll be giving out those those joining in over the same platform. So just keep on following us across the relevant platform in which you had used to join us across with today, and we will be giving you the links for the next coming up webinar. Now, again, as I said, these are those newsletters that I was just referring to you about. The QR code at the bottom can take you directly to that link. These are two other platforms that we do use. That's podcast and community, and WhatsApp group. WhatsApp group would be the same thing that would be used across. And at the end, you could use this QR code on your screen to register for that one-on-one session. We're done for the session in terms of giving you the overall description. I will now just be using the chat section to understand if there are any specific questions that you would like to put across. So I'll just see if from the past, if there's any new thing that you'd want to put, you could just let me know. The first one is USA acceptable of CBSE school? My daughter has decided already to be a lawyer. Can she apply to a USA grads law school directly? So I think I'll break this question up, Malay. I'll take one up into two parts. So the first part is, can a student be acceptable in USA with a CBSE or let's say an ICSC school? We have Malay right now. I think the only way I can better prove it is if Malay starts walking around in the campus. That's the only more evidence that anyone can give that there is a CBSE, ICSE student right there in front of you who's sitting at Dartmouth, a top Ivy League college. Now, the second part about your question is, can you apply to USA undergraduate law school directly? There is no undergraduate law degree in USA. You have to do a pre-law degree, which will be a bachelor's of arts in, in law, in politics, in psychology. You could also do a bachelor's of science in economics or a bachelor's of arts in economics. So there are a lot of different pre-law majors that you would be doing, and you'll be then applying for your law degree after you have completed your undergrads. And just to give out a little bit more information, that's the same route you have to follow if you're a medical kid. There are no medical degrees in USA for undergrads. Both of these students, if you're looking at an international experience with these two degrees, you should be largely looking at UK, because then they are the top institutes that are offering these two degrees at an undergraduation level. Now, one question I think, Malay, extremely relevant to you. In which grade did you take your three attempts? And anything that you'd want to add across in terms of preparations?
Yeah, so my first attempt was in December of the 11th grade. The second attempt was in, sadly, it was quite late in May because, again, owing to a tournament that I had in May of my 12th grade, rather. And my last attempt was in November of the 12th grade. So please don't use this as a benchmark in terms of when we should be giving our attempts. The last attempt was, yeah, after my application to Dartmouth had gone through, and I had to send an email later regarding a request in the change from my profile where I would change my grade and reflect accordingly from 1500 to 1550. So, like I mentioned, a lot of things can change, and sometimes I was not mostly going to be giving the third attempt, but something changed towards the end, and I just eventually did give it, and it gave me a good result. So, quite happy I did so. But yeah, please plan your attempts better than I did because this was a colossal loss that I had when I was giving my attempts.
Okay. Now I'll just have another one. Does I mean, so yeah, I mean that one's a very simple one. Does MIT have an admission program? Yes, it definitely has, and there is no specific under a qualifying score, and none of these universities do have a minimum score that you need to look at. It's an overall profile in which you would be able to put across your expertise as an overall personality that you have to put through. Now, I'll just look for a couple of more questions, Malay, in terms of
Yeah.
from the questions that we had put across, and then we'll share it. So, what's your take on the science section of ACT?
Sure. So the science section, like I
Yeah.
mentioned, it's not a science section. I believe that too, but it's actually just reading comprehension, but comprehension is based on science. So it's basically testing your ability to understand English, and that's basically it. So you are going to be tested not on your science skills because all the information that you need is going to be part of the passage that is provided. So it eventually, essentially, is just a reading comprehension with a science background, and they call it a science section, but it is testing your reading and writing skills.
Right. Now, Malay, just to ask you a very specific question, we do have parents who push us to start the SAT as early as possible. Some parents do also start requesting this in the middle or at the start of your grade 10. Do you think it really is not the right activity to start SAT attempts before finishing the maths curriculum?
So, like I mentioned, I would wait till after you have finished your math curriculum, and the reason being that what are you achieving by giving the SAT that early? It yields very poor results, and it's for all you know, it just might bog down the student from wanting to give it again if you get a low score the first time around. So it's unnecessary pressure, and honestly, giving the attempt, and you have 2 years. Taking my example, I gave my last attempt in November of the 12th grade, which is berserk. So you have more than enough time to give the SAT in those 2 years, and it's all about time management. The student who gives the attempt in the 10th grade is effectively worried or scared for no reason. But there shouldn't be a reason to be worried or scared if you've prepared well enough. And giving the attempt in the 10th grade is not like you're winning a race or you're achieving something before before others, because the deadline for all students is November August, sorry, of the Common App deadline is August of your 12th grade. So giving it in the 10th has no meaning. And I feel stretching up SAT attempt out from the 10th and then giving you the 11th. It's just like forcing you to learn and then relearn because no one remembers concepts for that long. So keep your attempts concise to 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. Unless you're really confident, do something crazy like I did. But otherwise, keep it concise to your 11th grade towards the starting of your 12th. That's when you should be giving your attempts.
Right. So, one more question that there are a lot of parents do have this as an overall question. That there's a joint entrance exam, extremely academic based paper. Even though I do recognize you weren't from the STEM field itself. I mean, what I'm saying by the science and technology side of it all. But would you be able to give us, let's say, an overall differentiator of what you would say between the difference of a JEE and an, let's say, SAT paper? What would be your view?
You cannot possibly think of comparing the JEE with the SAT. And the JEE is, I would
Agree,
say,
agree.
1,000 times more difficult than the SAT. The JEE requires 2 years of non-stop dedication for 10 hours a day from the best students to get the highest all India ranks. The SAT does not. You could study for college and your high school, sorry, rather, the 11th and 12th grade, to extracurriculars, do sports, do hobbies, and still leave time to study for your SAT, and you will still get a good score because, like I mentioned, it's practice of basic concepts and composure on the day of the exam. The JEE is a whole other ball game which requires much more effort, much more time. 1,000 times is maybe an understatement as well. JEE is another exam altogether, and the approach you should follow for each exam is entirely different. The SAT is a standardized test. The JEE is a specialized test. They're really trying to see your ability at a very, very minute level in the JE and your attention to detail and your ability to solve different challenging questions. Your SAT is trying to aim to just get a basic understanding of your standardized abilities of math and reading.
Right. Thank you, Malay. That was a really nice session, and really enjoyed the conversation around the whole important topic of SAT. And I hope a lot of parents today would be walking away with a lot of good information, a good insight about the SAT aspect, and very importantly, from that Indian perspective, when is the right time to start. I hope that the session has given a good light in this part. So thank you everyone for joining us across this weekend. We'll be also sharing very soon with you um, a couple of documents, things that we have discussed on this session. So all of you people who have registered for your diagnostic sats, I'll just immediately put back the screen there. You'd be able to get all of these, a good sum up of our session today itself. So do register as much as possible for that digital sat, so you'd be able to access all of this information that I'm telling you. So anyways, thank you. Good evening for everyone who has joined us across from India, and good afternoon to the people who have joined us across from America. Just one last, if you attempt multiple sats, there is not really, any of those negative effects. So Shant, I'll tell you, if you could have a direct one-on-one session with us, I'd be able to help you in this one part better. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.